Book 4 tells the story of the love of Aeneas and Dido. The story can be regarded as Virgil's etiological tale that explains why Rome and Carthage were arch-enemies. As Rome expanded its power throughout the Mediterranean, it inevitably came into conflict with Carthage, the great city across the sea. Carthage controlled the entire coast of North Africa and much of Spain and had an experienced navy. Rome was in possession of Italy, but had little experience in naval warfare. From 264 BC to 146 BC, the two powers fought the so-called Punic Wars, a series of 3 protracted conflicts that ultimately saw Rome defeat its rival and emerge as the sole superpower in the Mediterranean world. Dido was the legendary founder and first queen of Carthage. According to Virgil's story, when Aeneas and his group of Trojan refugees approach the city, his mother Venus is worried that the Carthaginians might harm them given their vulnerable situation. In order to protect her son, she makes Dido fall in love with him. Thus, Aeneas and his men enjoy the best hospitality among the Carthaginians. However, when he begins to linger too long and help Dido build the walls and towers of the new city, Jupiter sends his messenger Mercury to remind him of his mission to go to Italy and found a new empire there. Aeneas thus hastily leaves Carthage with his men, and heartbroken and half insane, Dido commits suicide. With her dying words, she curses Aeneas and his comrades and appeals to the gods that there will never be any form of friendship between the descendants of Aeneas and her own people. This is thus purportedly the origin of the historical conflict between Rome and Carthage. After the arrival of Aeneas, Queen Dido begins to feel the first tinges of love for the exotic foreign hero. She's initially hesitant about acting on this, and so she makes religious sacrifices and checks the omens in order to see how to proceed. This should have alerted her to the danger that she was entering into with her love for Aeneas, but yet the omens fail to warn her. In his description of this, Virgil writes, quote, "But priests, as we know, are ignorant. What use are prayers and shrines to a passionate woman?" He implies that Dido's passion makes her blind, but at the same time, the "as we know" suggests a skepticism with regard to the role of the priests to understand the workings of the gods. He portrays the passions as the absolutely decisive element in the story. In Thucydides' history, we saw how the historian portrayed the power of human passions, which were constantly seething below the surface, controlled only tenuously by the laws and conventions of society. Here we see a similar depiction of human psychology. Dido's passion is a destructive force that not even custom or conscience can control. Dido has already fallen in love with Aeneas, and this is the guiding motivation for everything that happens. Virgil describes her with a simile of a wounded doe who has been shot with an arrow. Although the animal initially escapes, the arrow remains in the wound and eventually causes its death. Dido's love is like a wound from one of Cupid's arrows, and it leads to her downfall. The simile draws the reader's attention to the role of fate. Once hit by the arrow, the doe is destined to die. Although it might survive for some time, it's on an inevitable path towards death. The queen of the gods, Juno, is Aeneas' main enemy in the story. She wants to prevent him from establishing Rome. She proposes to Venus to have Aeneas marry Dido and to incorporate the Trojans into the Carthaginian people. In this way, she plans to put an end to Aeneas' journey to Italy. While Aeneas' mother, the goddess Venus, sees through this, she pretends to go along with it. In response to Juno's proposal, Venus says that she, although a powerful goddess, is, quote, at the mercy of the fates. Venus thus proposes that Juno consult Jupiter, the king of the gods and Juno's husband, about the plans for Aeneas, since Venus knows that Jupiter intends for Aeneas to reach Italy and found an empire. Despite being a goddess, Venus recognizes the clear limitations of her power, which is subordinated to both that of the fates and Jupiter. Juno contrives to bring Aeneas and Dido together to consummate their love in a cave during a storm. This event is portrayed as a kind of marriage, although there was no formal ceremony. The important thing is that Dido takes it to represent a marriage and believes that Aeneas has given her a conjugal vow. The two live briefly in the bliss of love, and Aeneas seems to have forgotten everything about his mission to found his own empire. This prompts Jupiter to send down his messenger Mercury to remind him of this and induce him to continue his journey. When Mercury arrives, he finds Aeneas helping to build the citadel of the new city. To the Roman reader, this would seem to be a kind of shocking act of treason, since he was effectively helping Rome's enemy. Once reminded of his destiny, Aeneas snapped out of his haze of love and immediately orders his men to ready the ships for departure. It's implied that his men were tired of lingering in Carthage and were thus keen to carry out his orders and finally be on their way. Interestingly, his men remained attentive to their mission while Aeneas was forgetful of it.